Hi everyone, today I'll be looking at Charlie Parker's solo on the tune Donna. Parker's solo begins 34 seconds into the tune and is played over a single repeat of the following 32 bar progression. The progression is divided into 4 8-bar sections and is constructed around repeated 1-6-2-5-1 progressions in A-flat major. These shorter progressions are then extended and coloured by secondary chords and 2-5 progressions and altered diatonic chords to form the complete 32 bar progression. One of the diatonic chord alterations affects the submediant, which is regularly changed from an F minor 7th to an F dominant 7th chord. The diatonic supertonic is also often initially changed to a B flat dominant 7th chord before reverting to its usual minor 7th form. When used immediately preceding the unaltered supertonic and dominant chords of the A flat major progression, the F7 and B flat 7 can be heard as secondary dominants to the diatonic B flat minor 7th and E flat 7 chords respectively. Another chord alteration affects the diatonic leading note, which is here changed from a G half diminished 7th to a G flat dominant 7th chord. Use of the flattened leading note is not unusual. However, as seen in the following example, in this context it can be heard essentially as a passing chord between subdominant and tonic harmony and is therefore more contrapuntal in origin. The first of the secondary 2-5 progressions is found here preceding subdominant harmony, while the second is found here preceding a diatonic 2-5 progression. This recurring C dominant 7th can be heard as a secondary dominant to the unaltered submediant, while this B diminished 7th is a secondary diminished 7th to the C minor 7th chord, which itself is the supertonic of this secondary 2-5 progression. Parker's solo is essentially built of chord tones which are embellished with chromatic notes and other notes of the A-flat major scale. Here, for example, Parker initially leaps between the 5th and 3rd degrees of the underlying A-flat major 7th harmony before returning to the 5th using a D-flat passing note, the subdominant note of A-flat major. Here also, Parker plays the 5th of the underlying F7 harmony before using an extended B-flat major arpeggio over the B-flat dominant 7th chord. The extensions produce the 9th and 13th notes, which are again also part of the A-flat major scale. The first 3 bars of Parker's solo therefore essentially use only notes diatonic to A-flat major, except for D natural, which has here been raised from D flat to produce the 3rd of the B-flat dominant 7th chord. Throughout his solo, Parker employs similar techniques to those used in bars 1 to 3 to construct his lines. In this way, the notes of the solo are closely aligned with the notes of the underlying chord progression. However, rather than simply outlining the underlying chords through arpeggiation coloured by chromatic notes and scale fragments, an approach which is very localized to the harmony being soloed over at any given moment, Parker's solo includes a broader dimension connecting his lines across multiple beats and bars. It's the use of these long-range concepts which will be the main focus of this video. A quick glance of the score reveals Parker's regular use of rests to punctuate his phrases. Many of his long-range lines are framed by rests, although he also often subdivides these lines with additional rests. The first 7 bars, for example, can be heard as a complete phrase, subdivided into shorter sections. As we've already seen, the first bar outlines the notes E flat and C, the 5th and 3rd of A flat major 7 harmony. Bars 2 and 3 then prolong the C of the initial bar as the 5th of F7 harmony and the 9th of an extended B flat major 7 chord. In bar 5, Parker uses an extended B-flat minor arpeggio, the highest note of which is E-flat, the chord's 11th. Use of the E-flat as the highest note of this arpeggio prolongs the initial E-flats from bar 1 and begins a descent down the octave to another E flat, the fifth of this A flat major 7th chord. The return to E flat in bar 7 completes the prolongation of this note, while that final descent completes the return to C. Through these bars, Parker first establishes his target notes in the initial bar and then prolongs them as the fifth of the F7 harmony and extensions of both the B flat dominant and B flat minor 7th chords before restating them in their original octave over the A flat major 7th chord in bar 7. Even through the stepwise descent in bars 5 and 6, Parker still correctly resolves the chord's extensions. For example, this C note, the ninth of the B flat minor 7th chord, correctly resolves down to B flat, the fifth of the E flat dominant 7th. And this F, the ninth of the E flat dominant 7th, correctly resolves down to E flat, the fifth of the A flat major 7th chord. Through these bars, Parker also introduces two motifs. The first is this descending line with an initial 8th note upbeat used here over B flat 7 harmony, and the second is this ascending arpeggio combining a 16th note and 8th note triplet rhythm used here over B flat minor 7th harmony. As we'll see through the solo, Parker uses these motifs in several guises and on different metric positions. Beginning the next phrase, Parker uses a descending E flat minor arpeggio over the secondary A flat 7 chord, a usage which produces the ninth of the dominant harmony. Through compound melody, the descending arpeggio also begins the motion towards the notes F and A flat, the initial targets of this line. The upper line of the compound melody begins from this B flat and moves to A flat, the fifth of the D flat major 7th chord, while the lower line is initiated by this E flat note, which moves through E natural to F, the third of the D flat major 7th harmony. The compound melody therefore moves from a perfect fifth interval through a diminished fourth to a minor third. Here, Parker uses the ascending arpeggio motif, the beginning of which is modified with an 8th note instead of the 16th note pair used in bar 5. As with the motif in bar 5, however, this arpeggio ascends through the 8th note triplet to an E flat note, the ninth of the D flat major 7th harmony, before moving to D flat, the second target of this phrase, and the root note of the underlying chord. Although not literally played in the following bar, the D flat is prolonged as the fifth of the G flat 7 harmony and is again sounded as the 11th of this A flat major 7th chord before moving to C, the chord's third. Over the G flat 7 chord, although Parker introduces various extensions, they are all secondary to the drive towards D flat, the ultimate goal of this section of phrase. After arriving on C, the third of the A flat major 7th chord, Parker prolongs it through the next part of the phrase, first as the fifth of F7 harmony, and then as the ninth of this B flat 7 chord, before moving through compound melody to this B flat and on to this A flat. Through these bars, as well as prolonging the C, Parker creates again through compound melody two further lines which move through an augmented fourth between the 7th and 3rd of F7 harmony, through a passing minor third between E flat and G flat, which can also be heard as the 11th and flat 13th of this chord, to resolve on D natural and F, another minor third interval found between the 3rd and 5th of the B flat 7 harmony. In this bar, rather than using compound melody between the notes of different chords, Parker uses chord notes and extensions of the same harmony to create two lines which move through a perfect fourth between the 13th and 9th, a minor third between the 13th and root note, and another minor third between the 5th and 7th. Here, the F-sharp grace note can be heard as a chromatic passing note connecting the 5th of the previous bar with the 13th, and here the ascending motif from bar 5 is again modified as 8th notes and used to initiate the compound melody of the following bar. Through this phrase, Parker once again ensures that all chordal extensions correctly resolve. The 7th and 9th of the A flat 7 resolves down to the 3rd and 5th of D flat major 7 harmony. The implied 5th of the G flat 7 chord resolves to C, the 3rd of the A flat major 7, and the 7th of the F7 chord resolves here to the 3rd of the B flat 7 chord. The 3rd of the F7 also resolves correctly and becomes the 7th of the B flat 7 chord, here initially introduced as an upper neighbour note to the flat 13th. Beginning the following phrase, Parker uses a partial ascending motif before using a modified descending motif. As in bar 5, here the ascending motif is played over B flat minor 7 harmony, while the descending motif is modified to sound the root of the E flat 7 chord. The upper 7th of the B flat minor 7 chord resolves correctly to the 3rd of the E flat 7, while the lower 7th moves again through compound melody to B flat, the 5th of the E flat dominant 7th chord. The compound melody moves from a perfect octave between the doubled 7th of the B flat minor 7th chord to a major 6th between the 5th and 3rd of the E flat 7th chord, to a minor 6th between the 5th and sharp 9th, and an augmented 4th between the 5th and flat 9th on the final quarter note beat of this bar. The augmented 4th interval then becomes a perfect 4th in the first half of the following bar, where it resolves to another perfect 4th between B flat and E flat, the 9th and 5th of the A flat major 7th chord. This final perfect 4th then becomes a diminished 5th between the 3rd and 7th of the following F7 harmony. Parker then completes this phrase using a modified descending motif and the descending motif, which here contain the conclusion of the compound melody, moving from a minor to a major 3rd. The resolution of the F7 harmonies 3rd and 7th are also included in this line. Through this phrase, the lowest line of Parker's compound melody is a mirror of itself, moving from an A flat to B flat and on to B natural, before moving back through B flat to A natural. The A natural again begins the process with the resolution of the F7's 3rd moving to B flat, but stops on the final C, the 9th of the B flat 7th chord. In this phrase, the top line of the compound melody is a chromatic descent moving A flat, G, G flat, F, E, E flat to D.